It's our NH Notebook Division I high school basketball preview show. I'm Jeremy.m4v alongside Pete Terrier at JW Hills on Elm Street in Manchester. Pete, another high school basketball season is upon us. Seems like football season just ended, but basketball season is a great time of year, so we're glad to be here at JW Hills to preview the season.
Yeah, I'm very excited about it. I've been waiting for this ever since November 19th when it was Championship Saturday, and you know, we had the Turkey Bowl games, but look, I'm psyched. It was only a few weeks, and we're into the hardwood action, and I'm very excited about it. Let's get it going.
Now, a lot of schools have already started playing. You know, there's 8 divisions in New Hampshire high school basketball. 6 of them have already started. All the girls' divisions have already gotten underway, and for the boys' side, Division 3 and 4 have already started. Their opening night was last Friday. Division 3 and 4 girls was the week before that. So it's like, what are you waiting for? You know, Division 1 and 2 boys. Obviously, that's because the football season ends later for these schools. But Division 1 and 2 boys basketball gets started on Friday night. Looking back at last season, BG and Trinity, obviously they met in the championship game all season long. They were 2 of the favorites. You know, the year before that, you had a couple surprise teams in the championship with Pinkerton and Winnicott. So last year, wasn't really surprised that those 2 teams, BG and Trinity, made the final. But it was a great season last year. BG, not really surprised, they ended up winning the championship.
Yeah, I mean, I think some would say that it was kind of a surprise that Trinity got into the championship game. They were very, very young, very, very raw. You really didn't know how they were going to be able to put all that height, that length together and see how it worked out on the basketball floor. You looked at a team like Central, obviously, is always in the mix, and Salem and Memorial. Those teams are always there. And the 2 teams that you mentioned that were in the championship game the year before, nowhere to be found. I mean, Pinkerton was an average team last year. You lose Zach Matthew, and that's what happens. Winnicott, they didn't even make the tournament, did they? Championship game to out of the playoffs. So that just shows you how many seniors they had, how many key players that they lost. So it can change on a year-to-year basis. Although when you look at this year, I think a lot of people would say Trinity's the team that has a better chance to get back into it, but don't count out the Bishop Garden Cardinals, because despite the fact that they lost, you know, their big 2 in McClung and Green, I think they're stocked pretty well at Bishop Garden, so I wouldn't be surprised to see either those 2 teams going deep this year.
Yeah, it seems like you got a few favorites at the top. In my opinion, I don't know about you, Pete, but I think there's 10 or 11 really good teams, but there's 6 teams in particular who have a shot at winning a title this year. My opinion, those 6 teams start off with Merrimack. Merrimack's going to be a very good team. Merrimack, you mentioned Bishop Girton and Trinity. Nashua North and Nashua South, both the Nashua schools are going to be in that mix, in Manchester Central as well. That's the 6 that I think are the 6 contenders. Starting out with Merrimack, big story going into the season. Probably the best player in the state, regardless of division, junior guard, Dimitri Flores. Going back to Merrimack, and initially started off the year going to Kimball Union Academy, the prep school. So now he's back in the class of 2013, and that Merrimack team, they didn't lose a whole lot. They have their whole starting lineup back this year, including Flores and the 2 Jenner brothers. They're going to be a tough team.
Yeah, I mean, but people say that about Merrimack every single year, and they fall apart come playoff time. They got knocked off last year by Alvern in the playoffs. I was at that game. Alvern kind of came out of nowhere. They were a team that, you know, was in the mix 2 years ago. No one expected that. Same type of situation last year. So until Merrimack can get over that playoff hump, that tournament hump, I'm not buying Merrimack. Now, granted, don't get me wrong, they've got some talent. Dimitri Flores is a tremendous player. When you just mentioned junior guard Dimitri Flores, I had to say, wait a minute, I thought this kid was a freshman. But that's how long he's been playing and contributing at a high level. So don't count them out. But they need to prove something to me. I'm from Missouri. Show me, Merrimack. Show me that you can win come March. We'll wait and see how that works out. We got a lot of basketball to be played between now and then.
I think Merrimack's the team to beat. I'm just going to say that. You know, I think based on who they got coming back, that whole starting lineup, you know, 2 years ago, I thought they'd go deeper in the playoffs. They had all those seniors, along with when Dimitri was a freshman, and they had a strong senior class. They had a good 8-player rotation with 3 solid players off the bench. And I think they could have gone deep into the playoffs, but one of their best players that year, Eric Watson, didn't play in that playoff game, had an injury and an illness, and didn't play in the game against Londonderry when they lost. If he's healthy and he plays, who knows how far they go. And then last year they had some inexperience. They were relying pretty heavily on another freshman, Eric Gendron, and a lot of players that were juniors. Now all those juniors, they're all seniors. Dimitri's back, the Gendron brothers, they're all back. They have that year of experience together. I think they're the team to beat. Looking at BG and Trinity, you mentioned Trinity and their big guys. They're definitely going to be a team to be reckoned with those that big front line, Silvera, Luco, Andrew Lauderdale, Mabor, Gabriel. I think it's going to be points. I think that Trinity's going to play a slow-down game like they normally do, low-scoring games. It's going to be very tough for teams to score on them with those three big guys and then also Hunter Viscarella, one of the best defenders out on the perimeter.
No, I agree with you. I mean, that's just an intimidating team to go up against. Not a lot of teams, at any high school across the United States can say, we've got 6'11", we've got 6'7", 6'7" up front. Trinity certainly can, and that's a long 6'11" in Silvera Luco. And from what I hear, he's gotten a lot better. Gabriel, to me, is a tremendous player. He's the most talented out of all those guys. Lauderdale's just a load. I think he's more of a football player than he is a basketball player, but he's got strength. I think he's stronger than either of those other two guys. So they're intimidating. Their problem may be the loss of Wally Majan. I mean, Wally Majan, I saw him start playing pretty good basketball as a sophomore at Central a couple of years ago, and then he really stepped up an entire another level last year and had some huge games and was a kid that you could get 30 points a game from. Not that you necessarily needed it, but he had the ability to do that and kind of take reins of that offense and score the basketball himself. So they're going to miss him. It'll be interesting to see what Coach Keefe, and we'll talk to him a little bit later on in the program, it'll be interesting to see what Coach Keefe can do as far as a ball handler goes. You mentioned Bishop Guertin. I do want to go back to Merrimack for a second. I think Tyler Gendron is the key. This kid has shown flashes. I think the consistency has been a problem with him. Flores, you know what you're going to get. He's going to be there. He's going to give you 20 points a game, be able to distribute the basketball, play good defense. Tyler Gendron is the key. If he can kind of step up and be that 1-2 punch, sort of like McClung and Green were last year for BG, I do agree that they can go deep in the playoffs and maybe even win the whole thing if those two guys can play at that McClung-Green type of level as a 1-2 punch.
Yeah, definitely a good point. And as for Trinity, they're going to be very tough to stop inside with those big guys. And you're right about Mahjong. I mean, he gave them a kid that could handle the ball and against defensive pressure and run the offense, get into sets, and create off the dribble. He's not there now, and now their new point guard's a freshman. Not sure if you got a chance, Pete, yet to see Ian Sestar play, but he's a heralded freshman player, a 6'1" point guard. Well, he's more of a 2 or a 3, but they got him playing the point because they really don't have a true point guard on that team now. They've had a couple guys transfer. Travis Dakota transferred over to Manchester West. Dawson Dixon transferred to Manchester Central. So I know a lot of people out there are It's not easy to keep track of where a lot of these kids go, especially in the Manchester area. Every other day you're reading about, so-and-so is not going to Trinity, now he's going to Memorial or wherever they're going. It's pretty crazy trying to keep track of. But Ian Sestar had 66 points in a middle school game last year. I know it's middle school, but still, 66 points, not too bad, nothing to shake a stick at. He's going to be a factor on that Trinity team as well. Anybody outside of those 6 teams that I mentioned that you think could make a run?
Oh, man, talk about putting me on the spot and digging deep here. Look, I think you got it pretty good there. I mean, Alvern, I think, has a chance. They got a couple of big guys. Livingston. I like the kid. Of course, his name is escaping me right now, but he did a lot as a 6-man off the bench, a ball handler.
Sean Dunn, maybe?
Yes, exactly. Sean Dunn is the kid I was thinking about. And he's a tremendous player as well. And they got another big kid, Jimmy Thomaswick, that's coming back this year as well. So they've got some size, not Trinity-type size, but they've got 6'4", 6'5" kids who can score, who can rebound. So I think Alvern's a team that you should put in there as well.
The thing about Alvern, I'll say, is I'm really impressed with what I've seen. As people know, I go to games during the summer and during the fall to keep track of these teams. And Alvern, I was surprised at how much they developed last year under their first-year head coach Seth Guerin, because I saw them play during the summer and I saw them play during the fall leagues. And they had some kids that weren't showing up, and even when they had all their guys, they really didn't look like that great of a team. Yet that team made it to the semifinals. And I also saw them play this year during the summer and during the fall. They looked a lot better at this time, or during the fall this year, than they did last year. And last year they made it to the semifinals. So I think Alvern's going to be a team to watch out for. They had a game in the fall league playoffs. They beat Nashua South in overtime. When both teams had pretty much their whole lineups. Nashua South had all their guys. Alvern had everybody except Tony Bolio. They didn't have him, and they still beat Nashua South. And I think Nashua South's going to be a very good team.
Yeah, I didn't even name Bolio, who was a tremendous player, tremendous athlete. And I know, Jeremy, you're a card-carrying member of, these off-season programs, whether it be fall league, summer league, whatever, is what really gets teams cohesive, gets them working together and used to each other. And I agree that's important, but I don't think it's an end-all, be-all. I mean, these kids have lives, they have families, some of them have jobs. They can't be at every single summer league game, every single fall league game. And I don't think that you should discount a team's outlook because they couldn't get, 10 guys together to play in those leagues. I think the course of the season is a lot different. I'm talking about the regular season, that Division I schedule is going to tell you a lot more than what you learn in the summer and fall. Again, I think that stuff is important, but I don't think it's the be-all, end-all.
All right, and I'll say, I mentioned Nashua South. I think they're going to surprise some people. Their team didn't win a lot of games last year, but they have, just like Merrimack, Nashua and another team that has pretty much everybody coming back, Nashua North and Nashua South. Both Nashua schools didn't really lose anybody. Nashua South, they have, everybody knows about Anthony Muccioli. A couple guys that maybe not a lot of people know about, maybe have been flying under the radar. The Preston brothers. Tim Preston, point guard, and the big man, Jack Preston. Maybe if people don't know about these guys, they're going to know about them by the end of the season. They have those guys, the Dunham brothers, Michael and David. This is a good Nashua South team. They have pretty much the whole team coming back. They play good team basketball.
I love Nate Mazerol. I mean, I'm a Nashua guy. Nate's just a couple of years younger than me and played on a championship team at Nashua High. That was the unified Nashua High School when there was just one Nashua. And since the split, obviously got the North and South thing now, but Nate's been around that program for a long time. He does a great job. Defensive-minded coach. They've had freshmen that have gone on to big things. I remember Jake Nelson a few years back was this freshman phenom that a lot of people heard a lot about. Maybe the Preston kids will be very, very similar to that. I want to see them play. I very much look forward to that Chick-fil-A holiday tournament coming up in Nashua. I'm not sure if it's at South or if it's at North this year. I think last year was at North, if I remember correctly, so probably be at South this year. But that's a great tournament. You can see a lot of teams. So I want to see those guys, and I want to see them play well. And I think with North, they've got some individual talent on that team. Of course, when you look at a kid like Williams, at a kid like Gauthier, Farmer, who kind of came, in my opinion, out of nowhere last year and became a star for that team, gave him that third guy. They've just had problems kind of keeping
those guys are all back and they're all seniors this year.
Well, they've had problems kind of keeping their heads and keeping them all on the same page. They got a new coach there. I don't know anything about the new coach. Otaka, I thought, did a decent job, but he is no longer in charge there. They got a new guy. So I'll have to wait and see. I think those two teams that we're talking about, North and South, I think you should judge them more January, February compared to what we're going to see here in the month of December.
Yeah, you mentioned the new coach for North, Steve Lane. He played his college basketball at UMass Lowell, and he's coached in Massachusetts quite a bit. Just moved over into the New Hampshire area. But yeah, I think North is going to be a scary team. They have a lot of kids coming back. Like you said, discipline, decision making, shot selection, maturity. Those have all been things of the last couple of years that have been an issue with those North players. But there's no question they have the talent with those three guys you mentioned. A bunch of other players that are all back. They're pretty much all seniors. They got 8 or 9 kids that are going to get playing time, and pretty much all of them are seniors. So they're going to be a tough team, a lot of speed. They're going to really get up and down the floor. One team we're going to talk to later on, Manchester Memorial, they're going to be a young team.
We did not even mention the Crusaders.
Yeah, they're going to be young, but they're going to be talented. They have a bunch of freshmen. They're going to be very good. We're going to talk to Coach Fitzpatrick in a little while, but they might have some ups and downs with all their youth, but they're going to be a tough team.
What about Salem, too? I mean, it's hard to believe that we're not mentioning Salem either at this point. They lost a lot from last year. Will they be able to kind of – they were, I think, the 5 seed last year. Meiser, who was a kid that really didn't see a lot of heavy minutes prior to last year, his senior year. He had a huge year, shooting lights out with the basketball. Very impressive shooter. But he was like a one-year wonder for them. Now he's graduated.
Gallant's gone too.
Gallant is gone. Lorenz is gone. So they're 2 big guys.
I think they'll still be tough, though. They got Johnny Klecken back, or Klakon, their defender. Andrew Ruffin, their 6th man from last year, is a good shooter. I saw them play over the summer. They got some guys that are up from JV. They got some tough players that they're going to be very good defensively. They're going to be one of those teams that will have some low-scoring games. They're going to grind out games, but they're going to be very tough to score on, no question about it. Yeah, we mentioned Manchester Central. I mean, I think those 6 teams that we talked about, they're going to be right in the mix. A couple other teams that I think are going to be tough to beat that we haven't mentioned, Pinkerton and Spalding. Pinkerton and Spalding, they both have a lot of guys coming back from last year, and they're going to be tough. It's going to be some very good games this year in Division I.
Well, I think Spalding, part of the reason why they don't get a lot of press is because they're in Rochester. Keene's another team that you don't talk a lot about because they're in far outposts of the state of New Hampshire, so you don't think of them top of mind. I don't know. I think Spalding has a chance to be an upper echelon team, maybe a top 8 team. I don't really know enough about Keene to make any comments on that. You know that teams that are going to...
Well, Pinkerton was the other team I said. Pinkerton and Spalding.
Well, I think Pinkerton, they caught lightning in a bottle the year they won the championship. They had the best player in the state in Zach Matthew. He was a force. Nobody could contend with him. And he just had a tremendous year and put that team on his back. Now, granted, they have Alex Patrikas coming back, but he hasn't been healthy. He's had problems with his feet, and that's tough as a big man. He had a good sophomore year, but they weren't really relying on him. They had Ben Prue, and they had Zach Matthews, so he was just another guy that you really weren't concerned with, but he hurt you because you were so worried about those other 2 guys. So Chad Park, is he gone this year?
Yep, he was a senior last year. Yeah.
All right, so that was the hardest.
They're going to really rely on Chris Light, Kevin Colbert, a couple guys they're going to really rely on, especially with Patrikas being out, are 2 seniors for them. But yeah, I think that really covers most of the top teams. And what to expect from them going into this Division I season. We're going to talk to the coaches now. We've got a couple Division I coaches lined up, and as we continue with our Division I New Hampshire High School Basketball preview show on the New Hampshire Notebook, NHNotebook.com, here at JW Hills on Elm Street in Manchester.